So what is the future of mankind? What is going to happen to our brain when the computer and robot take over, and when the great industries invent all these machineries of ultra-intelligent machines? And what's your future as a human being? You understand my question? This is happening. It is not something in the future. It may take 10 years. And they say we'll do it in 10 years. Right? And they're going to do it in 10 years for commercial reasons. So they are acting from the outside on the human brain. Do you understand? Through biochemistry, through electric currents and so on, from the outside.
Imagine moving a mechanical arm by just thinking about it, or playing a video game using only your mind. Yes! Although it may seem like science fiction, scientists and engineers have been developing this technology for decades. It's called brain-computer interface, or BCI.
The field of brain-computer interfaces relies on the ability of the brain to be able to generate certain types of responses that can then be harnessed by computers, to be able to be interpreted by computers.
And they may change our conditioning from the outside, and probably they will. They'll invent better gurus than any other guru in the world. Don't laugh, please. This is very, very serious. It sounds funny, humorous, but it is a fact. The computer will invent the best God on earth, will bring about a society that will function mechanically. You understand? Face all this. And what is the future of man? If we, as human beings, don't change from the inner, from the inside, you understand? They are going to change you from the outside. This is inevitable. It's in the cards. We laymen know nothing about all this, what they are doing.
When we get to the 2030s, nanobots will connect our brains to the cloud, just the way your phone does. It'll expand intelligence 1 million-fold by 2045. That is the singularity. We will be funnier, sexier, smarter, more creative, free from biological limitations. We'll be able to choose our appearance. We'll be able to do things we can't do today, like visualize objects in 11 dimensions. We can speak all languages. We'll be able to expand consciousness in ways we can barely imagine.
Perhaps we don't want to know. What's going to happen to the human brain when we have vast leisure? Because the computer, the robot will do all the dirty work. We'll build cars, we'll sweep the roads, perhaps establish a better relationship between you and your wife. This is serious what we are saying. It may give you all the sexual experience through computers. Yes, sir, it's all of that also. So, what is the future of man?
It's the end of the world, at least that's what I heard them say. Who could ever think the world would end today?
In the coming decades, AI and biotechnology will give us godlike abilities to re-engineer life and even to create completely new life forms. Then the big political and economic question of the 21st century will be, what do we need humans for? Or at least, what do we need so many humans for?
Do you have an answer in the book?
At present, the best guess we have is keep them happy with drugs and computer games.
You can provide them with bread and circuses, and you can provide them with endless amounts of distractions and propaganda.
But this doesn't sound like a very appealing future.
We're going to become increasingly non-biological to the point where the non-biological part predominates and the biological part is not that important anymore. In fact, the non-biological part, the machine part, will be so powerful it can completely model and understand the biological part. So even if that biological part went away, it wouldn't make any difference because the non-biological part already understood it completely. Another step then is in the 2030s, when we can actually connect our neocortex, which is where we do our thinking, to computers. So I believe that will happen in the 2030s. We will actually, so just the way this is greatly amplified by being connected to the cloud, we can connect our own brain to the cloud.
It's about connecting the human brain to artificial intelligence, and then from a central point, which you can do, to dictate the perceptions of the population. And so once that happens, a perception that says, this is not right, I'm not doing this, will not manifest, because it's not what will come through AI. This is where we're going. And so then you look at how this could be achieved. How could this connection to the human brain be achieved? Why wouldn't we think that large numbers of the 8 billion would say, I'm not doing that, no way. So what you have is Elon Musk. He is running this Neuralink, which is based on, he's doing animal trials now. He's just, I think, got permission for human trials.
An independent review board has given the green light for the company to seek people with paralysis to test its experimental device in a 6-year study. The study will use a robot to surgically place a brain-computer interface, or BCI, implant in a region of the brain that controls the intention to move. Neuralink says the initial goal is to enable people to control a computer cursor or keyboard using their thoughts alone.
He's talking about putting sensors in the brain and having to cut out a bit of the skull to do it. Now, when you look at it from that level, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen on the scale they're talking about. And it's a diversion from the real way that they plan to do it. And interestingly, in my new book, The Dream, I quote Elon Musk in an interview in which someone actually said that, well, you know, cutting away a piece of the skull, you know, it seems a bit extreme. But he said, oh, no, well, you don't really have to do that. He said you can put the connection in via the veins.
I mean, there are a few ways to approach this, but some sort of interface directly with your cortical neurons particularly.
But doesn't that imply surgical insertion?
Not necessarily. You could go through the veins and arteries because that provides a complete roadway to all of your neurons.
What he means is by a
In 1988, Osho said, an electrode can be permanently implanted in the brain and it can be controlled from far away by remote control. Delgado exhibited it in Spain in a bullfight. He planted an electrode in the brain of the toughest bull, and he stood in the field showing a red flag. The bull rushed towards him ferociously and the people almost stopped breathing. But they did not know that he had a remote control switch in his pocket, just a small box with a switch.
Electronic mind control research is not new. A scientific milestone in this area came in the 1960s when Dr. Jose Delgado demonstrated remote control over a charging bull. By connecting a radio antenna to electrodes inserted into the bull's brain, Delgado proved that the animal's aggressive impulses could be thwarted by electronically manipulating the bull's muscle reflexes.
Do you realize
the fantastic possibilities if from the outside we could modify the inside. Could we give messages to the inside? But the beauty is that now we are not using electrodes.
In recent years, Delgado has shown that the behavior of monkeys can be altered using low-power, pulsating magnetic fields. But in these experiments, there were no antenna implants.
Any function in the brain, emotions, intellect, personality, well, could be perhaps modified by this non-invasive technology.
Delgado's research has so far been limited to animals. But in the Soviet Union, a radio frequency, or RF device, has been used for over 30 years to manipulate the moods of mental patients.
Osho continued speaking about this, and he said, "Every child's brain can be easily implanted with an electrode. You will have very obedient people. You will not have any rebels. You will not have any revolutionaries. But the whole charm of life will be gone. People will be simply vegetables enslaved scientifically, and they will not know because the remote control unit may be in the capital in the hands of the government. It can be useful. Criminals can be prevented. Murderers can be prevented. Thieves can be changed. Rapists can be transformed. But it is dangerous also. Anybody who is in power can make the whole country just a crowd of slaves, and you cannot do anything because you don't know."
We're living in very interesting and insane times. I think one of the biggest problems humanity has is that the nature of reality and what's currently going on in the world is so different to what we've been conditioned to think, and so the truth about what's really going on is too much for most people to face, especially since there are so many levels and aspects to it, which are all insane and unbelievable. While what I'm talking about here didn't start 4 years ago during the pandemic, I think that's a good place to start because in the past, the powers that be had always tried to keep a mask on their faces to hide their tyranny and fascism. But 4 years ago, they started taking off the mask and began to reveal themselves.
You must stay at home.
A 14-day quarantine will be mandatory.
Spain and France have now joined Italy in banning people from leaving their homes.
You absolutely must stay at home.
All gatherings are canceled until further notice. This means no weddings, in-person services, or even parties.
We will shut you down. We will cite you. And if we need to, we will arrest you and we will take you to jail. The time for educating people into compliance is over. We're watching you, and we are going to take decisive action.
I am directing all non-essential businesses to close. I repeat, if you are not an essential business, I'm using my power as governor under an emergency declaration to order you to close.
Unfortunately, many people are still so asleep that they think these people in power lock them in their houses and coerce them into taking experimental injections because they care about their health. Of course, some of these people have been injured or even died from taking the shots, which leads me to one of the main aspects of what the powers that be don't want people to know. You see, if you don't understand what's going on in the world and why it's happening, then the last 4 years won't make much sense. The truth is that this was all long planned with the goal of getting people to take an injection with nanotechnology in it. There are people still waiting for a microchip.
And new at 6, microchipping humans. Is it the wave of the future or an invasion of privacy?
The implants can mean no more fumbling around with keys or electronic guards, but as ABC 3340's Cynthia Gould reports, some see a major downside.
And since the 90s, David Icke has been talking about how the powers that be want a microchipped population, among other things. Even back then, he said that the chips that they had were so small that they could be injected. Elon Musk's Neuralink, along with microchips, are a diversion from the way that they're actually doing it. Even Elon Musk himself said in an interview once that it's not necessary to cut away a piece of the skull to insert electrodes. He said it can be done through the veins, and that's what the graphene shots are actually about.
Now, the key, or one of the kind of keys to
or the key, really, in many ways, but it's not the only one, to this receiver system in the body, in the vials, is something called graphene oxide. Now, graphene oxide is a superconductor of electricity. Now, this is, and it's in the vials, and it's very, very significant, not least because the brain processes information electrically. It communicates with the rest of the body communicates with the brain electrically. And if you can mess with that electrical system and in effect rewire it through graphene oxide, then you can not only affect the nature of the so-called physical body, you can change the personality and the perceptions of the people involved. And I know how many people have pointed out over these last few years how many people they know who've had multiple fake who are just not the same person anymore. They talk about them being vacant and stuff like that.
You see that in everyday life. The amount of people that you look and there's no one at home anymore.
No one at home anymore. And we can go into deeper levels of that on another occasion, because it's basically disconnecting the body mind from expanded consciousness. That's what it's actually doing. So this whole thing about graphene oxide in the vials is not new. Where does anyone really talk about this anywhere except in the real alternative media? But it goes back years that this was exposed. And here's a video from March 2022, just to give you an idea of this. And it's Dr. Robert Verkerk, scientist, founder of the Alliance for Natural Health International. And what he's talking about here, like I say, in 2022, early 2022, is graphene in these vials and what it's capable of.
Graphene is a pretty new substance. It was discovered in 2004. It has very potent electron transport properties. It really lends itself rather beautifully to nano-electronic devices. I've been following some of the work that was being done looking at behavioral changes in animals that were being carried out specifically with the purpose of mind control. And that work has been published in major journals. So the people who have suggested there may be a link between 5G or 6G electronic devices and graphene are not barking up a conspiracy theory tree. There is genuine reason to be concerned about the linkage between those two things. It's also a fantastically strong substance, 200 times stronger than steel. It can be layered into different layers. Raman spectroscopy is one way of determining those layers. Coming back to the UK, there has been a group in Cambridge headed by Andrea Ferrari that's done a lot of the work in terms of characterizing exactly what graphene is basically very closely related to graphite, but it has this these very specific properties in terms of electron transport and use in nanotechnology.
Well, I think you were talking, I think, before the vaccine even came out, and various people were about the fact that this was going to be in it. And obviously it's a very much undisclosed ingredient. It's not on the back of the packet, is it? And the dangers that this would cause, and we've seen that. Going back to, I guess, what you were talking about with the creating structures as well, is this something that you think amplifies over time? So people that have had it maybe might say, well, I'm fine. Over time, this influence could get stronger.
Well, you've used the right word there, amplify. Another thing to mention about graphene oxide is that it amplifies electromagnetic fields, right? So if you've got graphene oxide in the body, and it's not just going into people through the fake, and increasingly as they move other to the same system more and more, there's whistleblowers who talk about graphene oxide being in the chemtrails.
Yeah.
It's in lots of things now because they're trying to get this stuff into you because it's the receiver system. It's more than that. I go into it in the books, into deeper levels of it, but this is the key crucial level. It's the receiver of what is planned to be and is unfolding, the hive mind coming through this technologically generated electromagnetic field. And so what Robert Verkerk goes on to talk about is the impact of graphene oxide in the body and how you can see it by its vibrational frequency signature in the body. So let's have a look at this. It's again, March 2022. This is not new. It's just not getting out there.
Just remember when you look at these images that we're only meant to be seeing, in the case of Moderna, lipid nanoparticles with this very fragile mRNA in it. Now, immediately you start to see things that don't look like that. Should ring the alarm bells. In a normal situation, I've been involved as a scientist in many food adulteration cases. And as soon as you see something like this, normally you can just knock on the door of the National Medicines Regulator, the MHRA in the UK, and go, look what we found. And they'll pick it up and go after the company. In this case, we all believe that the system is too corrupt to be able to do that. But you'll see just from microscopy, you have a problem. When you start looking at the spectra, now you'll see, for example, on the top left, you'll see that very big peak. That aligns absolutely with the spectrum that you would expect for graphene. But you'll see it's pretty noisy. And it's very noisy because there's a bunch of things in, some of which are fluorescent. So they are reflecting, they're scattering more light. But it's very key that we're seeing that tall peak at exactly the spectrum that is expected for graphene composites. When you go to Pfizer, again, you'll see a whole range of ribbons, filaments, nano dots, all the things that were viewed as some generally conspiracy theories, and they appear to be there. Again, they should not be there. Exactly what they are is defined here by some Raman spectroscopy. There are other ways of doing more detailed characterization, and that's something that I've been talking to the scientists about. Once again, both in terms of counts, you'll see the graphene composites in a 2 centimeter spectrum, and they outnumber everything else. You'll see, again, they have these signature peaks around graphene in them. Same applies to the AstraZeneca as well. So I just want to conclude by saying that it's pretty clear that graphite composite forms as undeclared ingredients are very common in the vials. The Raman spectra were not crystal clear because they were confounded by a lot of noise and fluorescence. What is visible through microscopy appears to be in the form of ribbons, sheets, tubular forms, nano dots, and nano scrolls. And it is our view that further studies should be carried out on more detailed characterization of the forms, more quantification, more studies on function. Why are they there? Obviously, on toxicology. These are all things that are required, even if you're going to be putting natural nanoparticulates into food. Here we have an undeclared, adulterated drug that we can't knock on the door of the regulators with because they're in deep. And you'll see that there were a number of other spectra that were shown up that suggest that other substances that are not declared on the label are also there.
Some people's bodies can't handle the assimilation process being facilitated by graphene, among other things, which explains the excess deaths happening around the world.
This is a definite phenomenon which is going on. Thousands of people dying, no one talking about it. What's going on? Let's look at the facts, and you can judge for yourself. Now, to begin with, this is the data here from the United Kingdom from the OECD. Now, this is the first week of the year, so that's up to January the 7th. That's up to January the 14th, 21st. So they're the weeks of the year. And these numbers here are the excess deaths. So 3,123 excess deaths, 4,164 excess deaths, 22.5%, 26.4%, 19.8%. And we see this all the way through the year. Deaths being above what we would expect, apart from slightly below on week 10, slightly below on week 14, and slightly below on week 429. But otherwise, all the other weeks where there's data, this is basically up to week 30, which is roughly the end of July, 36,316 excess deaths.
According to many researchers into this topic, like the ones at La Quinta Columna in Spain, for example, the graphene in the shots has changed the synaptic connections in people's brains, making them behave as automatons that are no longer able to process information. This is why most people who took these shots seem to have no interest in finding out what's in the shots they took, and they seem incapable of questioning anything that's going on. It is destroying people's ability to reason and think for themselves.
Former President of Chile, Sebastián Piñera, made a public statement on national television that 5G is not only able to read our thoughts, but that it can even insert thoughts and emotions into everyone. Talking about a dystopian nightmare.
La posibilidad de que las máquinas puedan leer nuestro pensamiento e incluso puedan insertar pensamientos, insertar sentimientos. La tecnología 5G es un cambio aún mayor en nuestras vidas de lo que han significado todas las tecnologías anteriores en esta materia.
Este es el expresidente ahora de Chile. Y cuando empezó toda esta película de ciencia ficción que llamaban COVID, está presentando el 5G, un presidente de Chile vendiendo esto como si fuera un comercial de lámparas. Pero miren ustedes lo que dice.
Junto a los ministros de Transportes y Telecomunicaciones y de Ciencias dan a conocer el inicio del proceso de licitación de la red 5G. Escuchemos.
Una de las amenazas que analizamos en esa oportunidad con los líderes del mundo es la posibilidad de que las máquinas puedan leer nuestro pensamiento e incluso puedan insertar pensamientos, insertar sentimientos. Bueno, algunos dicen que la mejor forma de predecir el futuro es inventándolo. Bueno, eso es lo que todos aspiramos. 5G es un tremendo salto adelante, es un salto cósmico, es un salto copernicano, porque realmente lo que va a significar la tecnología 5G es un cambio aún mayor en nuestras vidas de lo que han significado todas las tecnologías anteriores en esta materia. La posibilidad de que las máquinas puedan leer nuestro pensamiento e incluso puedan insertar pensamientos, insertar sentimientos.
¿Saben ustedes lo que está diciendo? Está hablando, a la vez que vende el 5G, en el ámbito de la neurociencia, primero no es un salto copernicano, es un giro copernicano, pero no le vas a pedir más. Está hablando de insertar pensamientos, es decir, que una persona reciba instrucciones a través de una inteligencia artificial. Eso es neuromodulación. Estamos hablando de alterar patrones conductuales, que es neuroestimulación, insertar sentimientos. ¿Y esto cómo se ha hecho? Pues Rafael Yuste lo que ha hecho es, utilizando el óxido de grafeno que potencia las señales cerebrales, mapear el cerebro y ver qué áreas se estimulan cuando la persona está agresiva, cuando la persona está depresiva, cuando está triste. Muy fácil, no es tan difícil como parece. Nosotros lo habríamos hecho mejor, el doctor Sevillano y yo, pero hemos decidido tomar la vía de procurar el bien para los seres humanos. Entonces, si saben qué áreas se estimulan, las pueden estimular a distancia, de forma remota e inalámbrica. ¿No les parece raro el presidente de Chile vendiendo el 5G? Pero esto no era para que Internet fuera más rápido. ¿Qué tiene que ver con insertar pensamientos? Cuando habla de máquina, se refiere a inteligencia artificial, que es el otro factor. Ahora mismo el ser humano tiene 3 peligros. La inteligencia artificial, porque se está de alguna forma utilizando para mal. La inteligencia artificial, la telaraña red que han implementado a lo largo del mundo con antenas de telefonía, que ya vemos que son mortales, y la interfaz que están introduciendo, que es el óxido de grafeno en los inyectables. Por cierto, los indicios que tenemos es que ni siquiera hay material biológico en la muestra. Por eso apuntaban a que, aunque las vacunas estuvieran caducadas, podrían volver a inocularse, que no pasaba nada, nos decía la ministra Darias, abogada además. Y efectivamente, vamos a ver que el grafeno pues se puede utilizar como monitoreo o sensor, ¿vale? Sensores basados en grafeno para el monitoreo de la salud humana. ¿Dónde? Donde hay órganos eminentemente eléctricos. Sensor del corazón, ¿vale? Y de la cabeza, sobre todo de la cabeza. Pero no solo sensor, hemos dicho que es una interfaz. Pueden monitorear, que es leer información, y pueden escribirla, que es estimularla. La siguiente, por ejemplo, es: crean con grafeno una interfaz neurológica. Ahora nos vamos, por ejemplo, a la cabeza. Sana y eficiente. Eficiente para matar, ¿eh? No se pierdan. Y, por cierto, está dentro del proyecto, el gran proyecto europeo de la Graphene Flash. Si aquí en Europa metiéramos en la Graphene Flash a todos en la cárcel, todo esto se acababa. ¿Eh? Porque algunos han preguntado, ¿de dónde viene todo esto? Pues, en principio, de la Graphene Flash, como poco. Una interfaz de neuronas exterior. Neuronas hacia afuera es neuronas de inteligencia artificial. Otro artículo. Desbloqueo del cerebro con la nueva tecnología del grafeno. Donde ustedes ven en ese electrodo, que parece una, no sé, una media hoja. Esos son nanopartículas o nanotubos de carbono, ¿vale? Los mismos que después vamos a ver dentro de los inyectables. Hacia las interfaces de grafeno para conectar neuronas a dispositivos electrónicos. Es decir, el grafeno es una interfaz, ¿vale? Y es lo que hay en los inyectables. Ahora entienden ustedes por qué hablaba Sebastián Piñeira. Él no lo entiende. Pero por qué hablaba de insertar emociones, insertar pensamientos, monitoreo neuronal. Logran controlar, hemos dicho que la cabeza vamos directamente hacia ella, pero también hacia el corazón, porque es eléctrico, el grafeno es superconductor y se va a dirigir allí también. Cuando está en el corazón, ¿qué puede hacer? Pues con grafeno, utilizando luz pueden ser microondas perfectamente, dentro del espectro electromagnético. De forma remota, es decir, inalámbrica, por antenas de telefonía, podemos controlar miocitos y el latido cardíaco de las células. Controlar el latido cardíaco quiere decir que pueden hacer que lata 2 veces más rápido, 3 veces más rápido, cargarte un tío. Y de hecho, así es como lo dicen aquí. ¿Vale? Mover las células a voluntad. Dicen, nos sorprendió el grado de flexibilidad que el grafeno permite mover las células literalmente a voluntad. ¿Quieres que palpiten el doble de rápido? No hay problema. Solo aumenta la intensidad de la luz. O de la radiofrecuencia. 3 veces más rápido, no hay problema. ¿Matarlo? No hay problema. Es invisible, además, intangible, nadie se va a dar cuenta. De hecho, lo estamos viendo, ¿verdad? ¿Y cómo? Utilizando grafeno.
La Quinta Columna has, for the last few weeks, we've been seeing a lot come out of their studies. I think the most recent that we have seen is probably the most concerning. We've known for about a year now that graphene oxide is contained in the but I think the most concerning thing that we have found recently from La Quinta's findings is that when it is is around electromagnetic waves, it does react into self-assembling nanotubes. Here to discuss that with us today is Karen Kingston. Welcome, Karen.
Thanks for having me, Lauren, and thank you for sharing that just incredible research that La Quinta Columbia has done. It is truly groundbreaking in our battle against this bioweapon attack, transhumanism attack on the American people and the globe. And it substantiates everything that I've been sharing on the Stu Peters show for over a year now from all the patents, as well as what other doctors like Dr. Carrie Madej and Adriana Love and Dr. Jane Ruby have shared. So it really is groundbreaking evidence that I hope and pray is brought into all of the lawsuits that shows the dangers of these injections combined with the danger of radio frequencies such as those that can come from cell phone towers, 5G, and potentially even our own phones.
All right, so in this particular study, they did use electromagnetic waves up against the Pfizer vial of the vaccine. Now, Karen, what are we looking at here?
So what you're looking at is called single-walled carbon nanotubes, SWCTNs, per the patent, that use a technology called Tesla phoresis and genetically engineered hydrogel, which is under the quantum dot technology. And this is based on, per the patents, the Bohr particle, which is based on frequencies. So when certain frequencies are given, the genetically engineered hydrogel and the graphene oxide nanotubes begin self-assembly. And that is what you're looking at. There's a video that people can look up on the Rice Institute that they look up Teslaphoresis. This is essentially a version of it. So you're looking at a advanced artificial intelligent technology that is receiving electromagnetic signals to self-amplify and build out. And according to the genetically engineered hydrogel patents and literature, it actually can use calcium in our body to further produce these tubes that we're looking at.
Dr. Sukrit Bhakti also said that it has destroyed people's intelligence, which makes sense since the nanotech goes through the blood-brain barrier. Graphene, which is in the shots, is a neural implant. It's an artificial neural network that has the ability to amplify brain signals and heart signals and to send them directly to the cloud, according to Ricardo Delgado Martin of La Quinta Columna. This would put into context what people like Yuval Noah Harari have been saying for a while, like how human beings are now hackable animals. Dr. Peter Bragin, who's a psychiatrist, has also talked about how the injections are basically lobotomizing people and changing their personalities. The reason I started looking into the injections' effect on the mind is because I had started noticing changes in people around me, so I decided to look into it. I didn't Google it, of course, because that platform is censored, but I looked it up on a Russian search engine called Yandex, which is actually great for researching these shots because it's less censored. Anyway, I actually found some interesting information, a lot of it coming from other people who were also noticing the same thing. And then I also found research information from doctors who were talking about this. David Icke has also talked and written about this. In The Dream, he wrote, "The effects of the fake are clearly targeting the psyche too, as it shorts and rewires the information processing of the brain and body." Based on my research over the last 3 years, it seems that people's neurology is basically being taken over. And according to Todd Callender, who's a lawyer, it starts with the 1p36 gene deletion syndrome. This gene regulates the frontal cortex, which is responsible for higher order thinking. And it also turns out that this gene deletion is on Pfizer's list of adverse events. I've put together this information over many months after looking into it for a while. And recently, I came across an interview with a woman who took these shots, and what she says is happening to her is just insane. And yet, it connects with the research I've been doing before I came across her interview. Anyway, I'll let her speak for herself.
I am in contact with a woman from Australia named Taylor, who is here today, and she's willing to speak out about some of the changes that she's been experiencing in her body as a result of the nanotechnology. She's been documenting these changes for a while with very detailed drawings and microscopic blood results, as well as photos of her skin under UV light. So she and I were both trying to bring awareness to what's going on beyond some of the criticisms that we've heard of related to the vaccine, such as side effects and blood clots and turbo cancers and cardiac arrest. We've actually documented in a paper called Evidence of AI Assimilation in the Global Population Through the Pulsating Current Mechanism, something that we're calling assimilation. And so this is referring to an AI that is interacting with and changing the human heart and brain using a pulsating current of energy that is moving through the circuit of the body and neurons in the brain, with a connection point in the back of the skull and underneath the heart, which is associated with a voice that is giving commands and controlling the body. So there does appear to be some kind of connection to an AI central intelligence, and thankfully we have a firsthand account of that through Taylor and other individuals who are beginning to speak out about this. So I just want to thank you, Taylor, for your time, and we will go ahead and get into the questions. So the first question is, when did you get the and what happened immediately after the first one?
I got the first ones in September, so it would be coming up 3 years ago now. And we were instructed to get 2 within a 2-week period. So the first one that I got, I didn't realize at the time, because I was already in the habit of taking notes on my meditation practice or whatever it was that I was doing. So after I got the first one, I had later on, when I looked back over my notes to see what had happened and when did this develop, it was that night that I had documented changes to my cognition and headspace. And then by the second 2 weeks later, that's when I had gone to the hospital to say, look, I'm a meditator and I can see something, there's something within my brain moving through my brain, and it's also in my eyes, and it's changed my vision. So those were the 2 noticeable ones. Some of the things that changed with that was I started to have things which, we would usually say they're called visual hallucinations. But what I was really seeing was I was seeing either hypnagogic, well, they were mimics. They're artificial intelligence mimics of hypnagogic hallucinations, mostly inside the area of my left eyeball. So it wasn't even, and they weren't within my brain space either. So they were hypnagogic hallucinations. The other ones were matrix-style designs being shown in my eye, which were creating these dimensions of space. And then another one was that it felt like I was in what I can't remember the word right now. Sorry, it's been taken from my head. I felt like I was in a delirium, walking around, and so. At that time, the other thing is I noticed a sort of toxicity moving through my body or coming out of my body, which I felt like I had been in a nuclear war. I felt so physically sick, and this potent stuff was coming out of my body, and I was having these hallucinations of people in a supposed 5th dimensional setting with a sacred cow doing energy healing. And yeah, so
wow,
those were the things that started. Yeah.
Thank you. And you mentioned that you started hearing a voice immediately after the first vaccine. And what was that like? And why do you believe that that's the voice of AI?
Well, originally the voice sounded like my mother's voice. And I have written in my notes that I heard my mother's voice move through my head. So the 2 things that I noted that were issues there was that I've never actually heard my mother's own voice spoken inside my head in my entire life. And then the other thing was that I've never had words move through my brain. So it was the 2 things that alerted me was that I was actually hearing, something that sounded like her voice, and then also, the sensations of movement. After that, it was actually it was only until January or February that after a lot of things had happened, at one stage the voice was trying to tell me that it was cosmic consciousness, or that I had awakened my kundalini, that energetic force that I was describing as a type of, toxic sickness. That energy was trying, the voice was trying to tell me that was a kundalini energy and that it was moving up my spine. Now, I'm a meditator, but I don't have any experience with kundalini or pranic energy or anything like that. It's not in my area. So not only was I actually being spoken to about things that I'd never even read or researched, but it was saying new words into my head, just expecting that I was to know. So that was another thing that alerted me to, oh, well, look, I'm hearing words that I've just never heard before. I don't believe that cosmic consciousness can talk to me. The other thing was it was so violent that I was saying to myself, there's absolutely no way that this is something sacred. Right. And then the final point was that I just went through so much inquiry, and I said to myself that what I'm experiencing is non-human. And so that's when once I got to the point where I was saying, okay, well, this is non-human, that's when I started researching, what could be the possible other issues. And that's when the reports were saying it could be computational nanotechnology. And
Yes, yes, and you've provided a lot of details on what changes have happened to your heart and your neck and your brain and your spine. And you mentioned something about it feels like AI is overriding your mind and coding inside of your brain. Can you talk about that a little?
Okay, well, I think that the substances that were injected into me embedded themselves within my cells, and then they started creating a type of electromagnetic frequency, or even I read about kinetic magnetism, which is when sheets of nanotechnology are rubbed against each other and they create this force. So this force is being generated out of my own body, and at the same time, whatever has been embedded in my brain has connected to my own mind. So my own creative mind and my own philosophical mind has been significantly reduced, and mostly I think through a training program of an AI. So the thing with the heart and the brain is that I think that over a period of 2 years, they did training or like neuroplastic training using this AI to repeatedly influence me on how to behave under an extremely controlled and fearful situation.
That's getting into some of the torture you've been talking about experiencing. So every time you try to speak out or you do something that the AI doesn't want you to do, it has a way of torturing you.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, it started off with just taking the notes, because effectively it wanted me to accept the programming that it had designed for me. It had gone through my memories. I think that what it does is that the substance stimulates the brain to respond with memories. Then it takes some sort of, coded brainwave or coded visual data out of the eye or how the brain is seeing the memory, and then codes that, and then takes parts of the person's personality or identity, then puts it into an avatar in their computer system, and then it attempted to recode me with me. The only problem is that, the system is just not able to fully understand what a human mind is. It wasn't able to really get it. And so when it went to enforcing to me how I was supposed to behave, I was just like, oh, look, I don't agree with what's happening. I don't agree with what it's saying. The system uses low self-esteem and low self-worth to try and hold people down. And I don't mind having some low self-esteem and some low self-worth. I still don't think that means that a global takeover has the right to hold me down. So that's when I started writing the notes down of what was happening, and then through that I went through shock. It's like shock torture. It's these minute bits of electricity frying all through the body. It's the torture and twisting of the nerves. It's the puppet-like manipulation of my body, tendons and nervous system. And then the psychological abuse that I went through to start speaking to people about it was just extreme. It was beyond anything that I could ever really explain. I found support groups for other people experiencing the same thing and started talking with others. And we've just been through, it's like extreme chronic gaslighting, nanotechnology lobotomy, nanotechnology electroshock treatment.
Ray Kurzweil, who's a futurist, has been saying for years now that by 2030, human brains will be connected to AI. And he's not alone in this, but he's a good example. He said AI would connect humans to the cloud. The AI is what's in the basically. That's how the nanotech self-assembles and does other stuff. He also said that once the connection is made, AI, through the cloud, will do more and more of human thinking until human thinking as we know it is basically non-existent. David Icke says, we've seen the physical consequences of many people in death and injuries and health destruction from the shots. But what he's seen and noticed and heard from so many people are the psychological changes that have taken place. The word vacant is often used to describe people who took the shot, he said. He also says that people who've had the jab are starting to be connected to the cloud, and that this will affect their psychology, and it will also affect their acquiescence to authority, because the more the hive mind is developed through the cloud, the more people will not question authority, because what their brains are connected to is not programmed to question authority. It's interesting that he said this because the girl who described herself as a meditator who took the shots said that basically when she tries to tell people that we don't have long to be natural humans, that they can't even understand that the way they should because of the AI that's beginning to assimilate their minds into the cloud hive mind. She even said that she now thinks through an AI training program. What they're doing is basically changing the human body from human 1.0 to human 2.0, which is a far more synthetic human. Dr. Anna Mehausia wrote, "What we'll see is certainly mass casualties, but more and more just completely controlled people who can't register information, who are changing in their personalities, and whose connection to God is being severed by this technology." The nanotech in the shots controls people neurologically without them knowing it. It changes their brain and consequently how people think. This is why it seems impossible to get vaxxed people to look at the information about what these shots are doing to people. The graphene and other nanotech in the is overriding people's minds. This is why if you've been paying attention in the last 3 years, there seems to be much more insanity and violence in the world. This is because people are basically being taken over by the nanobots in their brains. There's a movie made recently about this called Implanted.
Welcome to Dynamic Health Cure. Let's set up your profile. Choose your gender. Choose your voice.
Hello, my name is...
Hello, my name is...
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Lex. Nice to meet you, Sarah. Sarah, what makes you feel good?
Is it part of the program, or are you just asking because you're curious?
I need to create a clinical profile for you so that I may provide the most accurate diagnostics. The more I know about you, the more we can work together to create the best version of you.
The physical effects are just the tip of the iceberg. While many people are dying and being injured from the not all people who took them are meant to die. The survivors of the graphene and other nanotech will be plugged into a hive mind. It appears that the process of AI assimilation is already happening.
The difference of this fourth industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you are doing. It changes you. If you take a genetic editing, just as an example.
On va les implanter dans nos vêtements, c'est-à-dire wearables, comme on le dit. Et après, on pourrait s'imaginer qu'on les implante dans nos cerveaux ou dans notre peau. Et à la fin, peut-être il y a une communication directe entre notre cerveau et le monde digital. Ce que nous voyons, c'est une sorte de fusion du monde physique, digital et biologique.
So we had these two big revolutions, the computer science revolution, or the infotech revolution, and the revolution in the biological sciences. And they are still separate, but they are about to merge. They are merging around, I would say, the biometric sensor.
This is where authority in the 21st century will reside, and all the important decisions will not be made by the Pope or by God. They will not be made by democratic elections and by individual consumers. They will be made by the algorithms in the cloud. Biotechnology will, for the first time in history, translate economic inequality into biological inequality. Therefore may even push humans out of the job market and will create an immense new class, the useless class.
Unfortunately, what's really going on in relation to the sounds like science fiction, and so many people, including those who didn't take the shots, would just dismiss this information because it sounds crazy. And yet it is still happening, and there's a lot of evidence pointing to the fact that it's happening.
The point of this was to end the human species, to create a new, as Elon Musk calls them, humanoids, like to merge technology into the human body. And before people say that's crazy, what do you think biotechnology is?
DARPA calls it transhumanism, military transhumanism. But in an interesting way, this is actually part and parcel of the whole movement towards robotics. It's not only making individual warfighters comfortable with robots. It's this idea of coupling man and machine and merging humans and machine. And DARPA is doing that with programs now with what they call biohybrids, which people might call cyborgs. You know, they are able to actually control a rat through a labyrinth remotely because they've implanted electrodes in its brain.
This is a developmental system made by MC10, and it has an antenna and some sensors embedded in it. And what we plan to do is work with them to advance a tattoo that could be used for authentication.
It's taking biology and making it technology, take technology and making it biology. And transhumanism is the merger of the human body with technology. It's obvious to me. I don't know what people, the words mean what they mean.
We are at the beginning. When you look at it, at technology transformation, it usually takes place in the terms of an S-curve. And we are just now where we move into the exponential phase. And I agree. Artificial intelligence, but not only artificial intelligence, but also the metaverse, near space technologies, and I could go on and on. Synthetic biology. Our life in 10 years from now will be completely different, very much affected. And who masters those technologies in some way will be the master of the world.
mRNA is software programs. It is encoding. And if you go to Moderna's website in the Wayback Machine from 2021, they specifically say on their website, mRNA is a temporary set of instructions for cells to make a protein. They call DNA the storage of that. And they call their mRNA platform an operating system.
That on a historical timescale, we are very close to an unprecedented and enormous and swift transformation of human life in the world.
20 years from now, they will be the size of blood cells and you won't need any surgery. It'll just go into your brain through the bloodstream. Little robotic devices in the bloodstream, into the brain. And they'll put our neocortex, which is the part of our brain where we do our thinking, onto the cloud, connected to the cloud.
Genome engineered animals and plants are happening right now. And this puts in front of all of us a huge responsibility to consider carefully both the unintended consequences as well as the intended impacts of a scientific breakthrough. Thank you.
What people aren't understanding is that we are in the middle of World War III. We're in the middle of a global war. Why did every nation around the globe in lockstep decide to lock down their countries, place their civilians on house arrest as if they had been invaded by a foreign enemy, put forward rules that you would have in prison camps in order to cause emotional and mental distress? So the question is, why did every nation around the globe agree to do this if we weren't in the middle of a war and under a global attack by some other global power?
Ladies and gentlemen, I send you my warmest greetings and best wishes on the launch of the Great Reset.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change.
Today, it's the beginning of a global mobilization effort to rally all forces behind this great reset initiative.
Therefore, we have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path.
Rebalancing investment, harnessing science and technology, and advancing the transition to net zero emissions, all elements of the Great Reset, are fundamental to building the future we need.
If you wonder what someone's intentions are, we're doing this for the greater good, well, look at the outcomes. We've destroyed economies around the globe. Our children are set back years in social and educational development, and young, healthy people and teenagers and children are having heart attacks and dropping dead. If you wonder what their intentions are with this mRNA technology platform, look at the outcomes. If we don't recognize that there's evil in this world, then we're going to be annihilated to the exact level of our naivete.
Claramente aquello de allí que parece un sable, esto, nada de lo que están viendo tendría que estar en una vacuna, nada, tendría que verse en la microscopía óptica. Esto ya es digamos, no sé cómo mencionarlo, es un disparate, ¿verdad? Y nada de esto tendría que verse con tan poca calidad de aumentos. Como poco podríamos decir, aquí hay mucha chatarra, hay muchísima contaminación. Pero después vamos a ver en otro tipo de inyectables que eso aparece en todos prácticamente. Pero las vacunas COVID tienen este tipo de objetos que son arrastrados. Aquel de allí, por ejemplo, ese que viene por aquí, ese es casi transparente si se dan cuenta. Miren por ejemplo aquí a la derecha, justamente abajo del todo, en la esquina, ahí. Miren. ¿Qué es lo que estamos viendo ahí? Pues lo que estamos viendo es un autoensamblado, es decir, una estructura que se ensambla con otra. Dijimos, ¿hay algún tipo de afinidad electrónica para que eso ocurra? Puede ser, porque el grafeno está dopado o funcionalizado con distintos metales, así es como aparece en la literatura científica. Sin embargo, esta inducción del por qué una placa se une con otra y después forman ese tipo de circuitería que da tanto miedo, es porque hay un proceso de inducción que se llama teslaforesis, es decir, las microondas o esas instrucciones que aparecen no solo es para los inoculados, para la inducción de pensamientos, sino para inteligentemente, desde el punto de vista artificial, provocar esos autoensamblados dentro de la biología. Aparentemente nada más que por el tamaño, evidentemente ya tienes una posible trombogenicidad, porque si empezamos a unir piezas dentro de la biología, pues esto supone un problema importante. Pero cuando todo esto además se monta y finalmente empieza a emitir señales, como la que emiten los vacunados, desgraciadamente antes hemos hecho aquí un barrido y efectivamente comprobamos que aquí hay muchas personas inoculadas. Pero la investigación de la quinta columna es precisamente para ellos también, es decir, cómo pueden paliar los daños, ya lo hemos dicho, antioxidantes, antiinflamatorios y anticoagulantes. Eso es lo único que funciona. Vamos a seguir andando por ahí porque estamos viendo una gota, recuerden. Y aquí tenemos información para aburrirnos durante horas. Nos preguntamos de alguna forma, oiga, ¿por qué no hacen esto en la versión oficial? ¿Por qué no ven imágenes de lo que hay en la microscopía? Aquellos que respondían que era una pérdida de tiempo analizar inyectables, yo no lo creo, ¿verdad?
5G is not the only technology they will use to read our thoughts and emotions. Their officially promoted agenda is to transform all natural human beings into cyborgs, a symbiosis between man and machine. They claim this will enhance our lives and even give us superhuman abilities. And indeed it may do that to a certain extent. What they of course don't mention is that once you are hooked up to the cloud and are controlled by artificial intelligence, you lose every and all independence, autonomy and freedom. Then you literally become a slave of a totalitarian digital surveillance network worldwide. And there's no escaping, because once you have technological implants inside your body, it will be even easier for them to monitor you wherever you go, and to insert all kinds of commands into your body that will control you even beyond your awareness. you won't even notice it.
We've reached the point when we can hack not just computers, we can hack human beings and other organisms. Humans are now hackable animals. You know, the whole idea that humans have, you know, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over.
Do you realize what this man is actually saying? Keep in mind that he is being pushed to the forefront all over the world by social media, Facebook, by Bill Gates, by Obama, CNN, science platforms, the financial world, etc. They insist that the world listens to this man.
Eventually, within 10 or 20 or 30 years, such algorithms could also tell you what to study at college and where to work and whom to marry and even whom to vote for.
So according to Harari, we should no longer listen to our heart, our intuition, our experience, our own senses, but we should allow artificial intelligence to determine who to marry and who to vote for. This means a total takeover of the human soul, spirit, mind, and our entire life by robots.
After thousands of years, during which humans were the rulers of the world, authority and power will shift away from humans to computers, and most humans will become economically useless and politically powerless. Already today, we are beginning to see the creation of a new class of humans, the useless class.